Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. And welcome. Thank you for sharing your evening with us. We hope all of us can have a bit of fun this evening. We have quite recently started a series of events called Collide. Collide is about bringing some provocative subjects with some interesting panelists and having good discussions around topics that we pick. So we did a very good one a couple of months ago around the commerce of art, the business of art, and it went brilliantly. And today we've got one about technology and humanity and where brands need to be in this increasingly digital world. We have a fantastic set of panelists this evening. We have Franck Boissinot from Carrefour. Franck, if you would, please. We have Lino from Google. We have Christian Andersen from IBM. IBM have been a fantastic supporter of the society through all of last year and the year before as well. We're very grateful to them. And we have Tom Warden from Siegel and Gale. And Siegel and Gale have made this evening possible, so big thanks to them as well. And I think without further ado, we'll get underway, right? Shall we? So imagine, if you will, this. Well, you don't have to imagine it. It's up there. There's all sorts of stuff happening in the marketing landscape right now. And as part of our charter to inspire bolder marketing thinking and leadership, we thought this might be a good topic to have a discussion around this evening. So you've got the technological aspect of things and very much the human aspect of things, because all marketing starts with the consumer, but increasingly marketing is technology-led and technology-enabled. And on the other axis, you've got the physical stuff, the world that we all know, and the digital stuff, the world that we all increasingly live in and have to, as marketers, be very, very proficient in right now. So, click. So, if you look at that grid for a minute, on the physical human bit, you've got culture, which is really what makes companies work, right? And if you look at companies today that are very visible, brands that are very visible, Uber's in a bit of trouble, in a spot of bother, because they got the culture bit wrong, okay? If you look on the other side, the physical tech bit, you have a lot of utilities, okay? So Google Maps is a utility, but it kind of sits in that space. It's technology helping us navigate the physical environment. If you go one up between tech and digital, you've got engines like Amazon's recommendation engine, which learn about us and dynamically in real time try and make things better for us in terms of the purchase experience based on our needs and our wants and what they've learned. And if you look at the digital human bit, well, that's everything that's on your smartphone, on your computer. It's the interfaces that we navigate to be able to do what we need to do in the digital space, but from a very human perspective, because apps are fundamentally about usefulness, okay? So that sort of sets the stage, and now we'll go back to our grid. Because if you look at most brands in our time now, very few brands are completely physical. Digital is a bit of an imperative. So every brand is going to have a shape, a contour across that grid, which is unique to itself, based on how it chooses to operate as a business, whom it engages, and so on. And the discussion today is really about where brands ought to focus, right? Where should the contour have a bulge, in other words? So Tom, do you have a view on that?
Yeah, I think increasingly one of the challenges that businesses face is trying to be more human. And so you even think about dealings with, say, insurance companies or a number of these sort of big institutions where the responses that you get feel quite sort of mechanical, even though you're dealing with a human being. And so one of the things that a number of these sort of big brands are trying to do is to become more human in their approach, and even using technology as well to help enable that. I mean, we've seen obviously the rise of a number of artificial intelligence platforms, whether it's chatbots or other sort of aggregators where they're trying to help people in a more sort of human way in order to have a better experience with that brand.
Okay, and the gentleman next to you, Christian,
Yep.
your company, IBM, is at the forefront of a lot of the things that Tom just mentioned.
Yep.
So what's your take on all of this?
My take is, well, basically my take on this is that, you shouldn't go out on either one or the other axis. It's not a either or, right?
Yes.
And this goes back to the conversation. A good conversation starter is actually what we had on the Festival of Media. Also the conversation between Zug and Jazz Marina in terms of e-commerce and so on, right? The fact is just the e-commerce will quadruple, right, in the next 4 years. But it will still be only between 8 and 10% in terms of what you do. Reversely, 90% of your business, will still come from bricks and mortar, right? So you need to manage this, right? I rather see it as a continuum instead of saying you're going one or the other way in terms of this. And if we go back to AI, let's also be very specific that from our point of view, and yes, we broke the IA window in 2011 with the Jeopardy show, right? And now commercialized it and still have a fair, I say, 12 to 18 months advantage on the AI side. But it is also very clear in the consortium we are with Google as well and Tesla as well, that we are trying to implement clear rules in terms of how we manage this. And it is not an age of man versus machine, but rather man and machine, right? So anyway, the artificial intelligence will help you gain deeper insights and recommendations in a vast sea of data that it's inhumanly possible to actually access, right? And with those capabilities, you can differentiate yourself. And as we showed in links, it can both be on the creative side to facilitate creativity, but also be more productive, gain more insights, right? Because I think in the center of all of this is the client experience, right? It's all about creating better, outstanding client experiences that show a superior value to your clients. And all of these, if you are in one of the 4 categories, all of these will play in, and those who master that, who can actually master it, they will be the winners, right? And when we get a little later on, I think this is also where, aligned with the marketing society, where the marketeers can be brave, right? Because will you stand up and hit that digital transformation and how to tie both your physical, digital assets together as a front runner in that in your organization, be the spokesperson for the client on how you use this? Or are you going to take the back seat and let somebody else drive it, right? Enough talking now.
You've given us a lot to think about, but if anybody here is tweeting, right, I think the thing to tweet right now is it's not man versus machine, it's man and machine. Alistair, what's our handle? So if you want to tweet, use that, right? Lino, Google's doing a lot of stuff with Google Home and things like that, so we'd love to hear your views.
Absolutely. So first, good evening to everyone. And second, I don't think I will go and give a general answer for a brand. I think that in particular, I want to talk about 2 trends. One is talking about solving for the individuals, and the same brand will be approaching the solution of how to best engage with this individual in plenty of different ways. And we have the technology, the scale, and the tools to make that happen. And it depends on all of us to adopt this quickly or as quick as we need. Okay? And the second thing, I think that brands will need to put out their values much more. We need to be authentic. We need to tell how we feel about things, because consumers will hold us accountable into this. And you mentioned Google Home, but more than speaking about the product and even one of our products, I would like to talk about how the way we interact with brands, with our daily life, is going to change over time. And it's going to change over time because there will be new devices, there will be new technologies, there will be new solutions that are going to be very quickly adopted because they improve the quality of life we have. And whoever is a little bit ahead of the curve, whoever is a little bit more efficient, more smart, into how to capture these changes, okay, you will really nail a lot of advantage to your competitors, because we are all in this game to win, right? And I say this, winning in a good way, right? So think about that. Think about what are the things that are going to get you this edge to make you be faster and win in your space.
Okay, cool. Franck, Carrefour, classical bricks and mortar player in this new world with digital, with e-commerce. Where are you guys with all this?
First, I'm lucky to be invited because everybody said that we're gonna die soon. So we are part of Majid Al Futtaim, so it's not the Carrefour that you may know from Europe. And as Majid Al Futtaim, we try to be a tech company. So today itself, we had launched a school of digital and school of analytics. So the full company, Majid Al Futtaim, is going to be more tech than before. That being said, Majid Al Futtaim is an ecosystem. So Carrefour is a part of it. And the idea is how can we merge all the synergies between the different companies that we have. So we don't sell cars, that's the other Al Futtaim. We have shopping malls, we have Carrefour, Vox Cinema, Magic Planet. And the idea is how can we leverage all that data into a big pot. I mean, I used to say it's like my hand. We have different fingers, but together it's much more powerful. And that's where we're gonna not make a conflict between physical and digital, but how can we bridge all of that into one? For us, e-commerce is not about the E, it's about commerce. We want to do business. We are lucky that today the present is good. Digital, as you said, e-commerce is 10% max. So we still enjoy 90% of the share. And we can make money out of it, and we can finance our future. And we don't depend on the shark investors. So that's how we are going to build our future. We started e-commerce in 2010. We didn't do much buzz out of it because we want to learn. The brand equity of Majid Al Futtaim is at stake, so we want to be sure we do it properly. We are today the second app download in the UAE. We just relaunched the Carrefour mobile app. We have plans. We do things that we say, but we don't say what we do. Mm-hmm. So we do e-food delivery for more than 1 year. Just 150 customers, they enjoy that because we want to be sure that we do the job properly. We are not in rush to catch Amazon or whoever. We want to be sure that Majid Al Futtaim will have the proper experience. We want to give great moments, so we want to be sure we do it properly.
Okay, great. Well, now everybody's had a chance to speak solus, and I think it's time to get into a discussion. So I will throw a question out there, which is on that grid. All of you, all of your brands, all of your businesses have a limb in each of those camps, right? So dynamically, what are the choices that you make, and what are the trade-offs that you make as a consequence of those choices?
I think also you look at luxury brands, that's a key area where these decisions, these trade-offs come into play, where so often luxury is associated with a very particular human touch. And for many years it's always sort of eschewed digital, but increasingly you're seeing digital elements come into these brand experiences, like Burberry and their sort of interactive retail is one great example of this. So I think it's really important for especially brands like that to use technology, to use machine in a way that really enhances that human experience, and to ensure that the human touch is always at the forefront rather than the technology. I was reminded actually even the other day of this innovation in savings. You see a few banks now who do these things around trying to help you save money because, you know, for all of us it's quite a difficult thing to do. And there's one bank that that I've been with, I won't name any names, but they encourage you to sort of shake your phone, and it will, for every time you shake it, put a select amount of money into your account. Whereas there was another bank that I saw that every time you make a transaction, it rounds up the figure that you spend. So if you spend 70 dirhams, it rounds it up to 100. And so without even having to think, without having to suddenly disconnect from this experience that you're having, it automatically does that. So it's sort of more in this enabling, supportive position. So I think, or from my perspective, that brands should always work to use technology in an enabling position, and that human experience or human-like experience should always take the forefront.
Great.
I would go a little bit with what Frank said, and I'm more like, instead of saying it's trade-offs, I'm more like the scalable approach, because it goes to that you need to manage all four at the same time, right? So of course, yes, if you haven't started, having your own e-commerce shop or your own e-delivery and so on, right? Scale it up, and we see, unfortunately, I think some companies chasing that now we need to be all digital. Well, I don't think you should put your money into being soup number 2 right now. It's probably not going to work for you, right? So, but on the other hand, I cannot see what, let's say, a bit of panic in what we see like in Marcy's or at Beppe is the other retailer as well, right? Then we are closing all of stores, we only go digital, right? I see that there must be a way where we can face this, right? Because at some point, you don't want to scale out of the bricks and mortar when it's still 90% of the revenue coming from there, right? So end of the day, get it in. Do you want to be in a marketplace, having your own web shop? You can be both places, and end of the day, as that continuously outgrow, scale down your shops. But I would rather see that approach instead of the panic approach, or let's say the gold digger approach that everybody thinks that there is going to be tons of money in the tech business, because there will not, right? It will end of the day end being a consolidated business where only there will be a few winners left, right?
There you go. So on the physical digital side, I think that not necessarily for our brands, but the approach that we have and what we typically end up having as a conversation is give the consumer the choice. It's up to them to define in the way they want to interact. And what you see as a trend is that digital is taking more and more space. I'm not educating you in that, you know this before coming. But I think a phased approach into understanding what steps you do to provide an equal quality and equal value proposition level in both sides is the key. If you are X in the physical space, make sure that you are X in the digital space. Don't make a two-tier approach. Mm-hmm. Even if it takes a higher investment, that's a very important thing. And the second thing in the duality technology-human, and this is what we do, I think what we bend these two, because technology and human are not opposite, in my opinion. While you bend them, you can be both at the same time. And let me talk to you about a very personal experience. I'm not from the region, and I engage frequently in these conversations and panels, and one of the things that comes frequently is, okay, are we replacing the human interaction by having people interacting through technology? And it depends. My children live here with my wife and myself, and my parents, I'm Argentinian, they still live in Argentina. And my sister lives in Madrid, and my cousin, who is like my brother, lives in Toronto. We can celebrate birthdays all together, thanks to technology. And if that's not bringing this human side into technology, just educate me into what it is. So there's a lot of things that depends into how you use technology, and it's up to us to put them to work into the right directions.
Yeah, and I completely agree, and that goes into another very interesting conversation. I think that leads out of this in terms of humans versus tech, and that is the skills, right? Because I think all of us can see the shifts and the increased needs for having the right skills here. There's a lot of people who have like doomsday prophecies in terms of that we will have a whole generation of not unemployed, but they will be unemployable, right? In terms of people. Well, I think, yes, we are going to see a greater change, both in our profession and in general over the next 20 years that we've seen in the last 100 years. But on the other hand, the doomsday prophecies, I don't really believe them, right? Because everybody can see that it's coming. Everybody is investing in getting those skills up and running, right? You saw us announce that we are now educating 38,000 Saudis, right? they are taking over the ICT sector. They don't have the skills, right? But end of the day, they need to be educated for the new world, right? And I think that is hugely important that investment comes in, so we have a workforce that end of the day is capable as we go forward. And then the other thing about tech versus human, let's also remember what are some of the tasks that is actually getting solved here. Let's take a true marketeer problem. How many is in my target audience? Okay, in reality, when you're done fiddling with your spreadsheets and spend 2 weeks on answering the question, right? Then you actually get back to what you were supposed to do as a marketeer, right? Creating the value propositions, right? Ensuring that the creatives were there. If you get the answer, well, there's 42,000 people in your target audience, and then I just say, please do the lookalike modeling to do that, and it's done in 2 seconds. Maybe I can spend my time on something more productive.
Frank?
Yeah, I'm not sure we have done really a trade-off. I mean, the clear direction we've taken is opposite of what happened in UK, where the traditional retailer, they try to catch the digital world. They overinvest, in my opinion, in their digital capabilities. They kind of compromise their present for the sake of a potential future. And whatever they do on digital, they are always one station behind versus the pure players. And in parallel, they have the hard discounters on the right side crunching their market share. So ultimately, it happens that on the present, they are degrowing. They don't take care of their current stores. They don't grow on digital, and they are crunched on the right side. So what we try to do here in the UAE, we try to keep the present strong. I mean, that's why we took over the Festival City Panda hypermarket, because that's what happened. I mean, if you grow in the present, then you secure a kind of potential money that you can invest in the future. So that's really the kind of trade-off that we had in front of us. I mean, should we invest a lot in the future with a risk on the present, or secure the present and then manage with the Majid Al Futtaim ecosystem a better future altogether instead of being silos? So that's really the non-trade-off that we've been through.
I'm going to pick up on something that Christian said about skills and actually lob it over to all of you in the audience, just to get all of you involved, because you ought to be. We are all learning new skills as we go, me at my age as well, because the world is changing very dynamically in those ways. So to what extent is skilling and upskilling your people in the profession something that is a huge pressing need at the moment? I just want to see a show of hands, if I may. Right? Is upskilling in the new world a huge need? Okay, we've got about 50-50 here, right? So we'll pivot the panel to talk a little bit about the need to upskill for marketers to be proficient in this new world that we're dealing with. Is that okay? Can we do that? Cool. Gentlemen.
Let's change the order. I'm happy to lead in this one. The way we look at this is that even ourselves, and I still need to finish the trainings I need to do this quarter, is that to be on top of the changes, you need to be constantly training. And forget about owning expertise in everything. You need to choose very carefully the depth you want to have into which fields. And you have the helicopter view that I think we all need to have as professionals in this world. And then you need to understand and choose very carefully where you deep dive. And when you deep dive, make sure that you do this in a way that is not just a one-off. Mm-hmm. Because if you want to be an expert into what is coming, you want to make sure that you retrain yourself on a regular basis. And also, finally, get these provoking thoughts all the time. We tend to be overconfident into what we know. Just let reality tell you what's going on. And if make this double check into what do you think, you know, how you're training yourself, and what the others think about that. I think that's a very healthy thing that we try to use all the time.
Yeah, but it's. I think we have exactly the same approach in terms of the depth that we need to have. I think it's only 3-4 years ago, you would find the marketeers in our organization being the jack of all trades, right? You do everything from the strategy to ensuring that the water's on the table and the chairs are there, right? It doesn't really function and doesn't really go a long way. So I think a couple of years ago we did a very dramatic shift, being very clear about the different professions we are having and the level of depth and subject matter expertise that a marketeer actually needs to require. And then overall, I think we can also see the shifts. I'm getting lots of CVs from people outside, and you can see the shifts. Where is the new jobs being created, right? Of course, in the specialization in terms of understanding digital marketing, going various routes beneath that, but also in terms of marketing analytics and basically the understanding the campaign optimization underneath that. Whereas all of the classical, I'm really good at running events, that's sorry, it's if you're really good at your job, you will always make money. But end of the day, becoming a commodity, right? And end of the day, that is my advice to people who come, you know, you don't need to be at rocket science to see where the shifts are coming, so you need to start educating yourself quite rapidly to keep up and keep yourself in the game going forward, right?
Yeah. I think that's crucial, and at Majid Al Futtaim again they created a leadership institute, and they secure that each and every companies and brands will be part of a global story, and they created that school of analytics. They will hire a lot of data scientists because it's no more an option to delegate that kind of capabilities outside. So we still deal with a lot of agencies and consultants, but it's a major move for us to make on board that kind of capabilities. Data is the future. It's no questions about that. How quickly we'll go there, nobody knows. But it's no more an option. We need to be there.
Okay. Tom?
I would say that you need both that sort of those expert generalists, but also the specialists as well, because you can have these people with deep sector knowledge, and whether it's sort of media or digital or brand or anywhere else. But unless you have someone who can link those all together and understands how each one of those fits as different as a piece of the greater whole, you're losing a lot of value from that department or that team of people. Even in our own team, we're sort of split across continents, but we have people who come from very different backgrounds who work as brand consultants, so people who have been architects or lawyers or engineers or journalists or coming from hospitality, and so they all come from quite a different angle, and people have a particular subject knowledge in certain areas, but a lot of us also try to work as these generalists, so it helps to draw ideas from adjacent industries or sectors and apply it to a different problem.
Well, great. All of that sort of helps us square the circle quite nicely, because if the people running the brands, if the people behind the business and the brands don't have the requisite skills, then they won't know how to optimally define the contour of the brand as it needs to operate over there. Now, this was always ever going to be a bit of a brief collide, because it's not the main thing. The main thing is the anniversary. So we will stop the panel discussion now with thanks to our panelists and open the floor up for questions.
My question is to whoever wants to answer the question. So the world is clearly changing. In the US, Macy's are closing thousands of stores. Amazon is opening bookstores and Amazon Go stores. And at the same time, they say consumer spend is rising. So what, in your opinion, some of these retailers haven't done right to get to where they are now, and some of the biggest brands in the world are having to shut down so many stores?
Yeah, I'm one of the potential dead, so. As I said, for me, commerce is the key point. Either you are physical, whatever. If you do the right business, if you have the right approach, if you care about your products, your range, your prices, then you will find a way to go through. It's not really the channel which is important. I think nowadays everything is omni-channel. Mm-hmm. You start online, we have nice discussions on that, with Facebook also. Everything starts online, but then you still need to meet someone or to test a shirt, You try the white one, but you want the blue one, it's out of stock, you order it, it's delivered tomorrow. So I really think later things are going to be blurred into a commerce story. And today the e-commerce is the word, but for me it's still commerce. It's what is your promise, what is your value for money. If I give you an iPhone 7 at 1,500 available tomorrow in the store, you'll do the effort, you see. I mean, it's where you're going to buy it is no more important. It's more what do you need, what do you want. Sure, the experience is very important. The great moments of Majid Al Futtaim as a target is key, but the value for money is still I think the base, the ground that you need to secure. So Macy's, I don't know, maybe they failed a bit on there. Maybe Amazon, they realized that they need to have a physical presence. Souk.com, they started to open a branch because after sales is important. Where do you take back the laptop that you purchased at a very good price online but doesn't work? So where is the trust? Where is the ability to have that human interaction to secure your purchase? So I don't think there is physical against digital. There is just commerce with new ways of doing it.
Actually, to that point, and I think before we talked about trade-offs as well, a few years ago I was working with this sports retailer, and there were two retailers that were merging together. There was a bricks and mortar sports retailer which had been around for about 30 years, fantastic reputation, loved by athletes down to the general public. And it was being taken over by this very rapidly growing online sports retailer, which was seen, I guess if you looked at it, it was like good and better for the online, and then better best for the bricks and mortar. So there was a lot of fear that when this online brand took over this bricks and mortar company, it would completely destroy the experience. But actually when they came together, they realized that there were a lot of benefits even in the experience. So rather than having very large footprint stores, which is actually what led to the bricks and mortar going under, they could have smaller footprint stores, but instead of having all the stock on the floor in quite prime retail positions, they could have a smaller amount of stock and then sort of have endless aisles. So there'd be a couple of each model, and then there'd be, say, an iPad or some display, and you could scroll through different colors or variants and different specifications. So you could take the best of what this online retailer had, along with the customer service and the fitting and the care that you had from that bricks and mortar. And that model has proven to be very successful for them.
Yeah, and well, I think there is deeper foundational issues with those companies, right? I think it goes to what I said before, they're panicking, right? There's something fundamental wrong in the terms of the customer experience, and I'm much more of the approach that Franck is also arguing for here. Well, then Macy's haven't had the right online experience, haven't made it easy enough, haven't connected the experience, right? And I think what we are seeing in few of these cases where they're extremely hard hit because they are hit harder than they should be, right? So I think there's something more fundamentally wrong with their business, and maybe that they haven't had a really client-centric view, right? In terms of who is actually my audience, and is my audience shifting, and if I want to bring in new clients instead of I have an aging, dying audience group, right? Am I actually following along? So I think those two examples, especially with Macy's that you see, I think is something deeper that goes into their strategy in terms of that.
Let me add a few things. One is I think that resisting the change is the key factor, and I'm not going to make any names of companies, but there's a few companies that were labeling their products in codes that was making this very hard to compare online on the prices. Some others were trying to block mobile phone data or avoiding having open Wi-Fi's. I mean, at the end of the day, it was saying, no, you come and you are in my hands and you buy whatever I want to sell you. And that did not really scale very well. And consumers at the end of the day prevail because they say, I want freedom of choice, I want to choose the best experience that I want. And only when you focus in that, you can succeed. And as you mentioned, some of the very, very, very successful players here, when you look at Amazon in particular, it's not just about the retail experience they have all this technology value proposition that is on the side, and they were initially starting on this side of the world, and they realized how this was so important to their business, and they built on top. And the cherry on top, they really, really analyze what their consumers want. They do all this data mining and they understand how you get these proposals. So I think that's a key.
Hi, good evening. I'm Manav and I'm from Ecolab. So your companies largely are business to consumer companies, at least 3 of you on the panel. What's your view on digital technology being used for business to business companies? Companies more conventional, whether it's shipping or chemicals that we come from.
I guess I have to answer that. So I'm the only B2B here. No, it is hugely important, and that was actually also a point when we were out at the Festival of Media speaking about commerce and end of the day the whole digitalization. It is extremely important as a B2B marketeer. It is actually, I would nearly say, for some of us, let's say the initial purchase is so big so you just don't swipe your credit card, right? That's not what you do. But anyway, from a business to consumer perspective, even though that the customer actually ends up buying in a physical shop, 70% of what you purchase as a consumer is influenced on everything you research online, right? The customer knows what they want before they come in. From a B2B perspective, it is actually even more profound. It is 90% of my clients. When you are buying something that is worth millions of dollars, or you're doing a $100 million deal or a $50 million deal for a piece of technology, you better well know that when you go out and visit those clients, they have done their research in depth and they did it online with all sorts of sources, right? In terms of what you could get from previous clients, what is on our websites, in terms of everything that we can provide them in a whole digital journey that starts before we even met the client the first time. And I would imagine it's the same for General Electric as it is for IBM, which is pure B2B businesses, right? So that whole digital sphere has, there's a huge focus on it, because if you're not there and you're not able to provide the right experience, the right information, and take the customer further in that journey, forget it, then we lose out on it, right? So I would say it's hugely important, and it's not different in terms of the focus we need to have on the digital side, although that, of course, it's not a swipe 2-second buy that you end up, and it's maybe a 9 or 1 year long engagement before you actually sign a contract. That's hugely important in terms of all of the input that the clients assimilate before they make their decision, right?
Yeah, let me add a couple of things. I don't know which 3 companies you meant, but I'm sure I'm on both sides. I think that first, if they research online, there's a high chance that they start the research in Google on a search query. But much more profound than that, I think that the big revolution that we are seeing over the years, and it's about large quantities of data. And large quantities of data doesn't necessarily relate into having a large number of consumers. It means that you can have a large number of data points. And the revolution about machine learning and how you really streamline all these large sets of data that you collected for a given thing means that you can be more efficient into how you do things. And I think this is where the play is going to be leveling up. It's not where you have the expert that will bring you with a turnkey solution. It's much more when you have the people that knows where to get the information, that is very disciplined about getting this information in the right way, and feeds a machine. And by a machine is a figurative term, right? There's possibly hundreds or thousands of machines looked after this, and really applying the top edge algorithms into getting into some useful conclusions. And this will have a profound impact on our day-to-day life. From the distribution of power grids, from the cooling systems, in many of the things, from transportation, really will change the way we live in the near future.
Other questions?
Maybe, sorry, just to say on the B, because we are B2C, but we are kind of B2B2C. And to answer your question, I think digital is growing on that. We had a training yesterday at holding level with LinkedIn, and I get almost 2 or 3 requests a day on LinkedIn for business opportunities. So I think before, to catch a Majid Al Futim Carrefour person, you need to go to different shows and whatever. Now with LinkedIn, with digital, you can it's much more easier to find us. So I think there is a strong impact already there.
Okay, great. Well, if the prosecution rests, if there are no further questions, then I guess we'll close the learning and move on to the liquids. So thank you very much to all of our panelists, Franck, Lino, Christian, Tom, and thank you for being here. Now, since we live in a real-time world, Zuhair from Siegel and Gale kindly offered to do a summary of the main points from the panel. So Zuhair.
Thank you. I'll try and do that. I mean, it was a very rich discussion, which is hard to summarize, so I've taken some notes. First, I'd like to thank the panelists and yourself, Ash, Franck, Lino, Christian, and Tom on our behalf. And thank you again for the partnership on this wonderful event.
Thank you.
I guess I have 3 key points to discuss. One is that starting with companies aspiring to be more human in an age of technology-driven, machine-driven, digitally driven, and so on. Another key point mentioned was that e-commerce will rule the next era, and we need to manage that process. And lastly, again, the way that we interact, based on that, the way that we interact with brands are going to change over that era. And lastly, my favorite sentence out of all of this is, it's not man versus machine, it's man and machine. And therefore, the way that it's important to invest in technology, in the machine, and enhance that, but nevertheless, it's equally important to invest in our employees and the human, and creating that integration and synergy between man and machine to deliver an enhanced experience to the customer. And by that, I close this, and thank you again for all of this.
Thank you, Zuhair. Thank you, Franck, Lino, Christian, Tom, and Asad. Asad is our chair, and Asad is going to summarize the year we've had, and possibly the year we're looking forward to.
So yeah, I have the obligatory job of actually not just summarizing what we've had as a year. I think it's a very appropriate event that we've attended as our first year anniversary. I remember it was almost, I think, around 6th of May, almost a year ago, that we formally launched the Marketing Society. And we've had a fantastic year. And I mean, if you just take away a few things from the panel today, one of the things you need to know is that obviously the speed of change is never going to be this slow ever again. And what a fantastic time to be a marketeer. And if you're in this profession, I think I'm already old. When some of you grow old and look back at what you did, even if it was a minor thing, the stuff that you're doing today is actually leading to some magnificent work that our future generations of marketers will be doing. And it is with that agenda that we actually launched the Marketing Society to inspire bolder marketing leadership. And although we've been around in Dubai for only a year, it's a very old organization, and they've been doing this for close to 58 years, coming up to 60 in 2020. And I mean, you know, our job is to sort of really carry the work forward. If we can move the slide, I can move the slides if you want. So if you look at the lineup of speakers we've had, I mean, some tremendous names. And we were very fortunate to have some of the really big global leaders from big companies like Google and IBM. You know, we had Bob Lord from IBM. It was a fascinating breakfast for those of you who attended. I'm sure you would appreciate that. And then we had Matt Britton, but not just those people. We actually tapped into some of the really grassroots talent in the market and entrepreneurial creativity, as we call it. This is how the Collide event was born. And we had people from Tom and Serge, and you know, the speaker lineup is fascinating when you look at the spectrum of inspiration we've had throughout the year. And you know, all of this couldn't have been possible without the member organizations we have in Dubai. And literally, it's within a year that we've gone to, when we launched, I think we were at about 35 members. We've gone to about 80 members in Dubai. And if you look at the organizations they represent, I would imagine collectively they represent a very good chunk of the MENA economy, if not just the marketing budgets. So, you know, really, thanks to our members who've made us who we are in this short span of time. a year. We're not where we need to be. All of what we did won't have been possible without the board members we have. And when we started out as a team, personally for me, it was an experience of working with such high performance individuals who are pretty much leading the industry in one way or the other. And if I can request, I know we don't have the full quorum, all of the board members couldn't be here, but if I could request the board members to stand up, please. And if you could all give them a round of applause. And lastly, but not least, all of this effort obviously requires a lot of support from people who enable us to do stuff like this. So if you look at the list of supporters we've had for all our events, obviously starting with our founding supporter and sponsor IBM, who've done phenomenal amount of work. So Christian and his team, obviously Christian plays a part as a board member as well, but the support IBM actually gives us, from a day-to-day level to really helping us shape up the content that we put forward in front of you as members is phenomenal. Siegel and Gale obviously have been partners with us in this Collide event, and a phenomenal event, a series of events that they've sort of chosen to work with us on, and very, very, very proud of that. We've had partnerships with Links, with Festival of Media, and these are the platforms that are giving us the breadth of exposure that we really need in the market to really grow. I talked about membership base. Initially when we started out, we kept the membership criteria to be 10 to 15 years of experience, CMO level. We've just recently launched the corporate membership as well. So for those of you who are not members and are looking for corporate or individual members, you can get in touch with me, any of the board members, or Alistair here, who's here from our UK office. I want to especially thank two companies who've been on a day-to-day level, been very supportive to us, Impact BBDO and Weber Shandwick. They've done a phenomenal amount of work in helping us organize events, and actually even, anything, the amount of work it takes could range from anything from putting up a banner at an event to actually helping shape up the content and the work that you see on stage. So thank you, guys. And obviously, lastly but not the least, thank you, Custard and Emma, for helping us organize today's event. I am standing between you and your liquids and your canapes, so I will close now. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed the event.